For this assignment, I'm going to answer question number 2, which deals with an animal right being violated for the good of human beings. I would like to discuss the use of animals by the military. Armies have used animals since the beginning of recorded history. Animals have been employed in a variety of uses. These include some traditional uses, such as pack animals and in guard and detection duty. Elephants, horses, camels, and mules have been used as pack animals. Dogs have been widely used as guard dogs and bomb detection dogs for clearance of minefields. In addition to these traditional uses, the military has used animals for some unique and often cruel uses. These include, during World War II, dogs were used as anti-tank weapons, and many different types of animals have been subjected to harsh treatment while being used for research and training. These uses show the conflict between animal rights and the use of animals for what is often justified as national defense. I will talk about each of these areas and the issues involved. So now I'm going to talk about the use of animals for transportation. The military has used pack animals since the beginning of recorded history. Even in this day of space-based and computer-guided weapons, the U.S. Army Special Forces is still using horses and mules in the war on terror in Afghanistan. Pack animals have suffered greatly in war. The famous horse-mounted cavalry charge ended during the First World War with the introduction of the machine gun. During the war, the British Army lost roughly 15,000 horses a month. The use of animals as pack animals is because many believe that these are dumb animals. As noted by Mark Beckoff in Do Animals Have Friends, most people believe this to mean that the animal is stupid and not just unable to talk. Since these were just dumb pack animals, it is okay to use them for this task, and since they are needed for national defense, it is okay to use them in war. However, animals have shown the military that they are not just dumb pack animals. In 231 BC, when Hannibal crossed the Italian Alps with his army to invade Rome, he used elephants as pack animals. Hannibal had successfully used elephants as pack animals and wore elephants in numerous battles in Africa, a terrain and environment that is natural to elephants. However, when he used them to cross the Alps, he ran into difficulties. When the pathway was too narrow or too close to a steep precipice, the elephants in this new and cold environment would refuse to move. This shows that they are more than a dumb animal. As noted by Marion Stamp Dawkins in Animal Minds and Emotions, this demonstrates the functional framework for emotions. The elephant is displaying appraisal of the situation, in this case, the dangerous pathway. The elephant is also displaying action readiness and behavioral action, which gives priority to one type of action, which in this case is refusal to move. To overcome this, Hannibal had to have his soldiers widen the paths before the animals would move. Sadly, of the 80 elephants Hannibal started out with, only one survived the crossing of the Alps. Many died due to the cold environment. It is one thing to use an animal as a pack animal. It is quite different to take the animal and place it in an environment that is totally foreign and the animal is not used to or can adapt to. In the podcast, The Emotional Lives of Animals, Nemchinsky pointed out that we should include emotional pain along with physical pain as a criteria to judge the welfare of animals. In the case of the welfare of Hannibal's elephants, it is clear that neither the elephant's physical pain or emotional pain were considered. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the use of animals as weapons. During World War II, the Soviets used dogs as anti-tank weapons. As puppies, they would only put the dog's food underneath a parked tank so the dog would learn that under a tank is where they could find food. When the dogs were big enough, the Soviets would not feed the dog for several days and bring them to the battlefield. There, they would put an explosive on the dog and send the dog towards a German tank. When the dog was under the tank, they would detonate the explosive and destroy the tank. The Soviets have stated that during the war, nearly 300 German tanks were destroyed in this manner. The Soviets have justified this practice by pointing out that this helped them defeat the German invasion of their land and that by using the dog, many Soviet soldiers' lives were saved. Clearly, Tom Regan's The Case for Animal Rights is applicable here. How are we comparing the death of the Soviet soldier to the death of the dog? Is this comparable harm? Regan also states, we are to treat those individuals who have inherent value in ways that respect their inherent value. I believe that you cannot say that using the dog as a suicide weapon is treating the animal with respect for their inherent value. Although, as noted in the podcast, The Emotional Lives of Animals, St. Thomas Aquinas, who used the classic medieval hierarchy to rank all creatures, which ranks non-human animals lower than us because of their lack of understanding of God, would agree that this is a justifiable use of animals. However, I believe whether or not the animal has an understanding of God is not relevant. The final thing I'm going to talk about is the use of animals for research and training. The military has long used animals for research and training. During the Cold War, both the United States and the former Soviet Union conducted extensive research and development of chemical weapons. In order to determine if the chemical weapon was effective, the chemical agent was administered to an animal. Oftentimes, goats or pigs were used to see if it would incapacitate or kill the animal. In a controversial use of animals, the U.S. military used live goats, sheep, and pigs for live tissue training, or what the soldiers called Goat Lab. This training, conducted at the U.S. Army Special Forces Medic Training Program, deliberately injured live animals in order to provide the medical student trainee with a patient to work on. These animals were shot, bludgeoned, stabbed, or received shrapnel wounds from explosions that required extensive medical care. The student was to save the animal or try to keep the animal alive for as long as possible. The U.S. military justified this training by stating the training provided the traumatic effect that is experienced on the battlefield, and it also induced a sense of urgency that is needed in treating wounds in a combat environment. The military also added that since there are similarities in the wound types of animals and humans, it did provide the opportunity to practice the medical skills needed to treat humans. Brody's position on this, as noted in Defending Animal Research, is the justification for conducting a research program on animals that would adversely affect them is the benefits that human beings would receive from the research in question. From this, it can be concluded that since the research was done by the military and was necessary in order to ensure the safety of the free world, then, by Brody's standards, this research is justified. That same logic can be easily adapted to justify the use of live animals for medical training. What Peter Singer had said about in practical ethics is the opposing point of view here. Singer pointed out that because experimenters often seek to justify experimenting on animals by claiming that the experiments led us to discoveries about humans, if this is so, the experimenter must agree that human and non-human animals are similar in crucial respects. In the case of training, the animals are used because they closely replicate the traumatic effect, sense of urgency, and wound types that occur to humans on the battlefield. Then it is fair to state that those animals are experiencing the stress and emotions that humans would experience. Recently, the U.S. Army's Medical Command has stated that live tissue training does not provide any realism or benefit to the medical training program that cannot be obtained through simulation training, and has recommended that the training be discontinued. There is no request for funding for live tissue training in the 2018 defense budget. This indicates that the program will be discontinued. It appears that the military has agreed with Peter Singer on this one. Thank you.